All right, let's take a look at the next slide here. We got a steals of the draft. These are the 8 guys that I picked. I started with telling Rob earlier in the week that let's pick 3 each. And I kept researching it every day, researching. I kept adding a guy, even added a guy last night. But anyway, these are the guys I have. And you would think it'd be unusual that I'd put Jaden Daniels as a steal of the draft at number 2. But the only reason I did was I think he's this year's CJ Stroud. I think in the end, he's going to have a better career and be better than Caleb Williams. That's just my personal opinion. So I put him as a steal of the draft at number 2. Roma Dunze, I think, is the biggest steal of the draft. And I might have even taken him over Harrison. I'm not sure, but I really believe he is going to be one heck of a player. He reminds me of DK Metcalf, but faster. So I really think that's a great pick there. I had Brock Bowers, who dropped all the way to 13. I thought he was a top 10 level talent. I think he might prove to be kind of a Hall of Fame level type player. So I think even the Raiders were surprised he got all the way to 13. I had Malik Washington, who played for our Virginia Cavaliers. He went very late in the draft. He's one of those very productive players. He was in the running for ACC Player of the Year. Had over 100 catches, had 1,300 yards, had 14 touchdowns. He's going to be super, super productive. And, of course, he went to the Miami Dolphins, which is Rob's team. So that was a really nice pickup at 184.
He was fourth in the country in receiving yards.
Right.
He was taken in the 6th round or 5th.
He went down that far because of his size and his, they think his durability might not be there. But he's just one of those ballers. Every time you throw it in his direction, he comes down with it.
I heard a scout talk about the most important thing when you're analyzing a player is what you see on film. It's more important than anything related to combines, 40 times, anything like that. Those things can help you get higher. Like DK Metcalf shot up as soon as they saw how strong he was and how fast he was. But they said the most important thing is watching these people's tape. That'll tell you with preparation on Saturday, if they prepare the same way, they can make the jump to Sunday. And Lake Washington on film was off the chart. And to think, you talk about value, getting him in that late of a situation speaks to how good this draft was. I mean,
and how fast are the Dolphins now? Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, he's the slowest one.
I know. Then you got Xavier Worthy. I mean, the Chiefs traded up to get this guy. They couldn't believe he was still there. They traded with the Bills, of course. Amazing receiver, one of the top 4 receivers in the draft, in my opinion. And he's just blazing fast. He's a Tyreek Hill type guy. He's 170 pounds, so he's a little bit slight, but he's going to be their burner. He's going to be their field stretcher, I guess you could say. Tony Franklin going in the 4th round and joining his friend in Denver.
Tony or Troy?
Troy Franklin at 102. So that was a really excellent value there, I thought, and obviously pairs him with his college quarterback. Peyton Wilson from NC State. Rob and I got to watch a lot of football with him. Rob works for NC State, so we know Peyton Wilson and we know what a value he is. He plays a lot like Luke Kuechly. He's a sideline to sideline kind of guy. He's a tackling machine. Yeah. He's very physical. The worry with him is that he does have some injury history because he plays so wild and crazy like Kuechly did. So there's a little bit of a concern there, but maybe, he can work with the linebacker coaches and find ways to protect himself in the NFL, hopefully. But I think that's a heck of a value for the Steelers to get him in the 4th round. And then I think maybe one of the top 2 or 3 steals in the entire draft is Cooper DeJean, who most scouts had ranked at the 22nd best player total. And the Eagles go ahead and get him as their second DB off the board at number 40, which is pretty amazing. So these are my 8 as I did the research this week. What other ones would you guys add?
I think one for me was the Panthers selecting Jonathan Brooks. I thought that was a very big pick at the running back spot for them. I was mentioning to Thomas earlier, I think if the Panthers don't get him there, then Dallas may pick him up at, I think they have pick 53.
Right.
But Dallas decided not to go with a running back. But I thought that was the best running back in the draft, in my opinion. And I think they got him at great value at pick 46.
No question. He's going to be the centerpiece of their offense for sure. Robbie, did you have any that you thought
Uh,
of?
just looking over my notes a little bit. I think Sanat to
Yeah,
Washington was pretty
yeah, that was
good.
a really, really good one.
Nice
They,
pick, 53rd pick. Gives them a weapon. Me personally, I think the most important pick in this draft was Brock Bowers, and I think that he went to the wrong team. So it's confusing. He's going to a team that can use him. He's going to add a lot of value, but I think that they already had a nice mayor coming
well,
along, and it just didn't make sense.
well,
And on the other hand, a tight end seems to be this crucial piece that really pushes a team over the top to get into the Super Bowl and possibly win it. If you look at the last 20 winners, pretty much almost all of them have had a superior tight end option. And a lot of the teams that were runner-ups, second teams, had also the same kind of option. And then you look, I said this in another podcast, but if you look at what happened to the Ravens when their star weapon, Andrews, was trying to come back and was still hurting, they weren't the same team. So I think the tight end position is extremely underrated because when you look at who becomes champion, it's a team with an all-star tight end. And there are very few of them in the NFL. And when you
yeah,
have one that's most likely a can't miss, you have to take it.
you have to take him because he was the best player there, and they had missed on Michael Penix, who they really wanted. They had already, apparently their GM said they had already filled out the card for Michael Penix Jr. at 13. So they were just stunned, and they had a couple picks to decide what they were going to do, and he was the best player available. I will agree with you that it was very confusing because they chose Michael Mayer last year in the first round, the tight end from Notre Dame. They took him as a first-round tight end. So now they've got 2 first-round tight ends on the same roster, which doesn't make a lot of sense. But what are
The
your
nice
thoughts
thing is
here?
Brock Bowers can be used in a bunch of ways. He can carry the ball. He can go he can do sweeps.
Yep.
You can
He
get
played,
creative with him, but I think there would be other teams that would benefit more from him than the
yeah,
team that he went to. So
no doubt about it. Yeah. Zach, what are your thoughts about the Brock Bowers pickup?
I'm big on Brock Bowers. I think Brock Bowers is probably the best tight end I've seen, maybe in the past 5, maybe 10. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you got Travis Kelce in there,
Mm-hmm.
but Brock Bowers is he was so important to the Georgia offense. You've seen
Mm-hmm.
when he got banged up a little bit, what happened to that Georgia offense. They significantly fell. And like Rob said, it's a very underrated position. And I agree with him completely. I think Brock Bowers is a team. I mean, is a player that if you take him to a team that is right on the edge of, being good, you
yeah,
implement him into that offense, and then they just
Mm-hmm.
explode. Everything
Well,
clicks.
you notice, Zach, that the teams that are getting to the Super Bowl the last 5 years all have a pass catching tight end. That's
Yeah.
yeah,
Pro Bowl lever tight end.
yeah. They have a
Um,
superior weapon at the tight end position, and
yeah.
if you have a shot at that position, you fill that because they're really rare. They're unicorns.
Yes.
What's interesting about him is you have Michael Mayer, who plays just standard tight end positioning, but Brock Bowers, they bring him in motion. They can hand it off to him as a fullback. He can do
Yeah.
jet sweeps. He can play the slot like a slot receiver. So I see them moving him around a lot. I think he's going to be a really important weapon for them. And they'll probably be 2 tight end sets quite often.
They could easily do two tight end sets. But my point is, a lot of times when you're analyzing players, you're not saying somebody's good or bad. What you're saying is oftentimes, is their value match their pick level? Were they picked at the level of their value? And second, did they go to the team that needed them the most and
Yeah,
that they needed the most?
that's right. That's right.
And I would say that he did not go to the right team. But
Yeah. Well, I like both of you guys' picks. I like Brooks and I like Sanat. I was actually going to put Sanat on here, but I didn't have enough room. So I'm glad you mentioned him. But I'm really happy he went to Washington. Washington let Logan Thomas go in the offseason and very much needed their pass catching tight end. So I'm excited about Sanat. He's going to be really good. So let's take a look at, this is the CBS Sports headquarters snap draft grades. These came out right after the draft. I just wanted to take a look at a couple different lists. This is one of them. You can see this is Pete Prisco is the one who did this ranking for CBS Sports. So his best grades were, he had Washington, our old team, Robbie, as an A plus and the only A plus team. And we'll talk some more about who their draft, what their draft looked like. But I agree with that. I think they were definitely one of the top 3 drafts in the in terms of grades. He had Kansas City in there. He had the Rams. He had the Steelers, and he had the Cardinals. What are you guys' thoughts about these 5 as his best grades?
Well, number one, I think the Cardinals getting an A is just because they had 12 draft picks.
Right, right.
With the like we've been talking about the whole podcast is
Yeah,
just the amount of talent when you have 12 draft picks. A team like the Cardinals, they had a lot of need in a lot of areas, and
right.
they were able to fill that. Now, I think the only thing that the Cardinals are still questioning is, do we have our franchise quarterback?
Mm-hmm.
I do not think they do. Some
Either.
people are still a Kyler believer. I'm not. So I'm not. I think I would have went quarterback somewhere with them. I'm not sure where we could have. I think you couldn't have passed up on Marvin Harrison Jr. But I just think they're gonna still run into quarterback issues.
Well, this is what Rob talks about. I mean, there was all those guys that went in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th round, all those quarterbacks that are developmental quarterbacks and could sit behind Kyler for a year or 2.
Mm-hmm.
I would have taken like a Milton. He's a really great prospect, and he needs a year or 2 of seasoning. But
Spencer Rattler, Sam Hartman,
Rattler, yeah. Exactly.
Decent guys that could be good backups for a year or 2.
That's right.
And you're not going to burn a bunch of capital to put them as a backup.
But you'll notice a couple of the teams here that are always good. So the Rams did great. They've got a great front office, great coach. You got Kansas City. They always seem to be on top. They win the Super Bowl, and then they get an A grade in the draft. And then, of course, the Steelers have always been a well-run organization with Mike Tomlin and their front office. So,
Steelers crushed it.
Yeah, they really did.
I do believe Washington probably got the best draft. The reason I say that is when I took their needs, their stated needs, and I looked at what they drafted, they were the only team that addressed every single need.
Right.
In my opinion.
And by the way, do you know who their new GM is this year? His name is Peters, and he was the assistant GM for the 49ers for the last 5 seasons. So it's almost like he learned under the best, right?
Mm-hmm.
He learned roster construction from literally the best roster. Mm-hmm. And so he comes in this year, and in his first draft as GM in his career, he hits an A plus. Mm-hmm. So, that was a huge hire for Washington. They didn't even have a GM for a couple of years. So the fact that they got this guy from the 49ers is, very promising for that new ownership group with Magic Johnson and those guys.
Yeah, they picked up Luke McCaffrey. Some nice little projects. He's learning how to play wide receiver.
Yep.
They got a really nice filling of their needs. And
yep, they needed a solid middle linebacker. They got that guy. They needed some offensive linemen. They got that. They got a DB.
Yeah.
So, really, really good. Some of the worst grades here kind of surprised me. 49ers at C+. I'm not sure I would agree with that. I think they had a pretty decent draft. I wouldn't give them an A, but they were pretty solid. The Seahawks with a C+, the Texans with a C+. I'm not quite sure why that was. I looked at their draft. It didn't seem terrible to me.
Yeah, I love the Texans draft.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. The Raiders, they gave a C, I think, because of the argument Rob was making earlier, and that is that they took Brock Bowers, a great player, but they didn't really need him. So, and they didn't seem to address a lot of their other needs. Mm-hmm. They didn't get their quarterback. So, a lot of issues there with the Raiders. The Falcons had a C-, getting really penalized by that very strange pick at number 8. And then the Browns, they didn't have much to work with. They had basically traded away all their picks for 2 seasons to get Deshaun Watson. So they just were kind of, the cupboard was bare. They didn't really have a lot of picks. And when the ones that they did have, they didn't really fill the needs that they've got. So what are you guys' thoughts about some of these worst grades?
Yeah, I think with the Texans, I thought the Texans had a great draft. I think they did a little more than people thought they were going to do last year, and
Hmm.
they really, I mean, they got another guy that works really well with C.J. Stroud, the tight end, Cade
Hmm.
Stover, and
Hmm.
they're reunited again. And like Rob said, the tight ends are a dime a dozen. I mean, he's definitely not, at the level that some of these guys, but it's great that they filled that piece in. And I just want to ask a general question to you guys with the Falcons. Let's say you guys are the GM. You're
Hmm.
on the clock right there. It's your turn to pick. Who are you picking at number 8 if you're the Falcons?
I'm going edge or defensive tackle or linebacker. I mean, they, like Rob said, Falcons absolutely needed a star at all three levels out of this draft.
I'm going edge
On
rusher.
defense, on defense. Yeah, probably edge, I'm
You
thinking.
start you start in the trenches, and the best thing you can do to a good offense is disrupt it. And the only way to really do that is to have lockdown corners and get to the quarterback before the play can develop properly. And if you are deficient in talent like they are, they're at the bottom of the league. You have to start with disruption. And then you move into one star at each level. You've got to have a star linebacker, a star safety, and a star corner. And then you help the other corner with other guys. And then you build from there. This is going to take 3 drafts probably to rebuild this defense, but it doesn't help when your first pick is a quarterback you hope to play 3 years from now.
A lot of people aren't really talking about this, but there's another player that this hurts, and that's Bijan Robinson. I think you sort
Yep.
of shoot yourself in the foot with him as well. You're
Yeah.
not
No, that's true. That's very
the
true.
best, yeah, the best years that he's going to have is going to be under a quarterback that is out the door in 3 to 4 years.
Do
And
That's
you
right.
do you remember Aaron Rodgers watching Caleb Love get picked? He was furious, and the
Yep.
reason wasn't as selfish as it looked like. Oh, how dare you threaten to bring in my replacement? It was more about you used that pick when I need a receiver. You know,
Yeah.
we could be doing special things here, and
Right.
you bring in a guy who's going to be breathing down my neck but not playing, and I still have the same receivers and same tight end situation. That's
That's
why it
right.
was mad. It wasn't as selfish as it looked. It was really like, I believe in these guys. We just need a little help. And
Right.
putting a backup for the future is not helping anybody.
100%.
Well, he was looking for a weapon. I mean, he had really young
Yeah.
receivers back then. He wanted a weapon or a tight end or maybe an offensive lineman.
He
I mean, he
probably
really
wouldn't have
wanted to
even
build a
minded
team.
if it was a great defensive player because that helps the
Yeah,
offense. So
that's right.
he just was like the head scratcher. I think it's the same thing with Kirk Cousins. It's not so much that you're
So,
bringing in somebody to compete with me. It's that pick right there would have been so beautiful to get one of these studs, one of these,
Yes.
you know,
Zach, if you were the GM of the Falcons, what would you have done?
Yeah, and I'm gonna be completely honest with you guys. I would have went Brock Bowers.
Yeah.
yeah,
I would have. I mean,
yeah, me too.
I mean,
I think,
Brock Bowers would have been a much better pick than Michael Penix Jr.
yeah,
because that would fulfill a need.
Yeah,
I think the biggest thing is that it was a panic pick in my mind. I think the Penix pick was a panic pick. And
Hmm.
yeah, I think it would have been better to panic on Brock Bowers because then your offense is just so legit. I understand you had one of the worst defenses, but then you can start building on that with your other
yeah.
picks. I don't disagree with you guys as far as the
Although,
edge
although
rusher,
the
but
Falcons already have a premier tight end, so maybe they were thinking that. I know that I think felt like the Raiders pick was also a
Wait,
panic pick,
who
right?
did? Oh yeah, they
Yeah,
have Pitts.
Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and Sanu went to the Dolphins.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, I don't mind that an offensive player got picked, and then they proceeded to pick a bunch of defensive players, but it wasn't somebody who could help you right now. So
exactly.
you're not going
It's
to pick
just
somebody who's going to help you right now and not fix your defense.
it's
That
just head scratching.